Evening, everybody. So what I thought I'd take you through is a set piece that I work through with businesses that are positioning themselves for growth. So this is almost like a sense check of where they're at, measuring where they are at in a proven format so we can build a business plan. Why that is important is that about 70% of businesses that go and try and position themselves for growth, 70% fail to do it within the first 3 attempts. So it's quite a significant number. That number came from the Institute of Directors. And what I'll talk you through is some of the reasons why that is and how to avoid it, how I measure it in a way where essentially I can present back to the business why they are not positioned for growth or the areas that they need to address before they go too much further. Okay. Now, some of the data I've chopped out of this because part of it is also about profiling a team. So there are elements that I've taken out just to keep it within the time frame we've got. So I'd also use things like SDI or DISC profiling, and I'd do that on the individuals, but also the whole team. So I can say, you know, your team is far too much people focused or process focused and not enough performance focused. We can get all those metrics into it as well. Okay. I haven't worked with a company called X, but I said I want to use some of their data, which they're fine with, as long as I just remove their name. So it's not Company X. All right. So the key questions that we're sort of getting down to when we're looking at growing a business is why, what, and when. Okay. And a good reference point, if you haven't read it before, is What Got You Here Won't Get You There. It's a great book because it basically talks about the key elements of most businesses find that they're trying to continue to grow past a certain point using the same methodology, and actually you can't. There's only a certain size you can get to with certain methods. Then you have to change those methods and go again. And it's the same when you then want to become from an SME to a corporate. You can't just use the same methodology in a corporate as you can in an SME, and vice versa. Okay. So, and what we're trying to flush out is 4 key things that we start to get our heads around. So what we must have, so those are the vitals. If we don't have these, we're not going to grow. It's not going to work. What we should have, so those are things that we want to consider. They're really important, but they're not vital. They're not going to tip the plan over. Could have the things that would just be nice to have and are great ideas, and then agreeing what we won't have. Now that might seem a bit crazy, sort of talking about what you won't have. But when you're working with a team, getting past some of those things to say, look, we're not going to have that now. We're not dealing with that now. I take your point. Thanks for your feedback, but we're not going to have it. So park it. Yeah. And what you're trying to get across when you are talking to, you know, senior management teams down to maybe somebody on a shop floor about how a business is going to operate going forward comes down to one thing: perspective. Everybody's got a different perspective. Who can see 3? Who can see 4? Okay, so it's how you're looking, the angle that you're looking at things, which becomes the factor. Okay, and how do we get past that? So the 6 key requirements for growth. Now put this together, choosing the headings quite carefully, because actually they apply to every single business. Okay, so first of all, you've got vision, you've got consensus, skills, incentives, resources, and your actual action plan. Okay, now why are they stacked in that order? If you haven't got vision with your team, you're going to get confusion, right? So if nobody's clear what the business is trying to achieve, you just get confusion amongst the ranks. Well, I don't know what we're trying to be. I don't know why we're doing that. Nobody understands where the business is going. Okay? If you haven't got the consensus, you will then get sabotage. That's not deliberate sabotage. Nobody's running around your office starting to cut your cables. Yeah. But if people are not aligned with what the vision is, and the consensus is essentially we can't do it, guess what? It will get sabotaged, because the internal team will be saying, well, that's not going to work, is it? No, you're right, Fred. No, it's not going to work. We all know it's not going to work, don't we? So they've already sabotaged the plan. Yeah. So you've got to get consensus about what you're trying to do and how you're going to deliver your vision. If you haven't got a consensus from people, then you're on a non-starter. If you then look at skills, if you haven't got the right skills within your organization, you're not preparing the people ready for growth, and you're not addressing you're not doing any skills analysis before you set off on your new path, then you're going to get anxiety amongst the team. Yeah, because they're going to go, we're not geared up to do this. We don't know what we're doing. We haven't got the core skills in this business to deliver that vision, that plan. We might even have the consensus that we're all on board with it, but crikey, we haven't got the skills to be able to deliver this work. And then your incentives, if you haven't got the right incentives, motivations for people to come to work and do their job on a daily basis, you're going to get resistance. Yeah? People are just going to go, well, you know, I work 9 to 5. Why do I want to get on board with that? Yeah. Resources. We've almost probably worked in organisations where there's been quite an aggressive growth plan or work goals, whatever you're faced with, and you haven't got the right resources. Now, the resources can be people, could be money, it could be systems, processes, whatever you want to put under that heading in a business. But if the resources aren't there, the plan fails, especially when you're growing, because essentially growth means more work. Yeah. And then last but not least, the action plan. Essentially, if you haven't got the right action plan, you're going to get a false start. So all this stuff leads you to a false start. And that's what's in the data, which says that 70% of businesses fail on their first 3, because essentially they have not covered all these bases. Yeah. The action plan can be as simple as you like, but it needs to be the working agenda of what's going to underpin everything else. So it's, when we leave this room, what is it we are going to do? And how does that happen? And what resources are underpinning it? What incentives have we got in place for people to go and do it? What's the skills that I've got backing all this up? What's the consensus from the team? And does that all underpin our vision? So you can read it backwards, forwards, it works the same way. Make sense? Of course it does. Of course it does. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I mean, when I did this, I tried to avoid things like capacity in manufacturing. You could say that's a resource. Yeah. So, you know, your resources, you know, we've all got businesses, big or small, resources. What are they? You know, if you're a one-man band, well, what resource have you got to keep your accounts in check? What resource have you got to keep your marketing in check? You know, what resource have you got to cover your phones if you're busy out seeing clients? You know, so big or small, these kind of headers do matter, especially if you're trying to grow a business. Because the thing that everybody forgets about, everybody wants to grow their business, don't they? We all go, who wants to grow their business? Hands up, everybody? Yeah, we want to grow our business. Right. What the key thing everybody forgets when they want to grow their business is, first of all, it always costs money. Yeah? Secondly, it's always harder work because it's extra productivity. Yeah? So, you know, your investment in time and money means that unless you've planned it out correctly, you've essentially lost that money. So, you know, I now get paid, and I have been for the last 8 years, I get paid quite handsomely to just step in and rescue an investor's money. So they've piled hundreds of thousands, if not millions, into something, and they're going, it's not working. We're going to lose our money at this rate if we don't sort it out. And very often when I unpick what's happened, it falls into one of these categories. Yeah? Classic one I'm dealing with at the moment. The resources aren't right. The skills aren't quite right. Yeah? They're all over the place and they're doing a technical job. So it's a non-negotiable. Okay? I can send you a copy if you like. Yeah, because it, you know, screenshot it. It won't be that clear. Have I got the resources? Yeah, I have. You know what a great delegator I am, Joseph. So what this essentially does is, you know, what essentially I'm always trying to do with people is getting them, company X, to look at company X. So it's inward looking. Yeah. Let's have a look at ourselves before we go out into the big wide world trying to be bigger and cleverer and start spending money on getting bigger. What do we actually look like now? Because if we understand what we look like now, we can move forward, can't we? If we understand underneath those headings where we're falling short, we can do something about that. Now, it might be we're trying to grow and sort out the problem at the same time, but it's a bit like, you know, it's just being self-aware. Okay. So one of the things that I pull out using the same headings is I do some engagement surveys with the teams, asking them a set range of questions to flush out what they understand and where we are underneath those different headings. And this is actual data. And one of the key things that I always try and look at is what's the overall position from the company's perspective? What do the directors think? And what do the actual team think? Yeah. So you can see in this example, great. Directors, of course, think the vision's amazing. 83%. You know, we're up there, guys. It's all. Team are at like 68%, which isn't horrendous, but you can see the difference. Interestingly, on consensus, they were low. And it's like, guys, this is your plan. Why is your consensus so low? Well, because we don't think the team's going to be engaged in it. Well, you were right there. Well done, 10 out of 10. You got something right. Yeah. Skills, we've got the skills gap, incentives, resources, action plan. They're all over the place. So you can see some of the lowest scores, you know, because this was basically people scoring, you know, 0 being there isn't a plan, to 10, the plan's the best plan in the world. And you see the lowest score I picked up on was a 2 under consensus. Yeah. So it starts to give us a feel for where are the actual people at. So this isn't me making it up. This is you looking at yourself. This is your team looking at your business and coming out with the answers. So really, do we really want to push a button on spending a lot of money or moving forward when we've got people in the team that are not engaged at all? They're not with us. And we can start to drill into some of these areas. And as I said earlier, the thing I put alongside this is things like SDI profiling and things like that. So I can start to pick out who's the person that's, and I do this in a very delicate way. So I hasten to add, pulling out the person who's a 2 and saying, why are they a 2? Are they genuinely a 2, or is it the business, or is it them? Are they the right fit in the team? And I don't like to use the word fit, by the way, but you know where I'm coming from. Because part of the problem when companies are trying to grow as well is that the people that might be great at the day-to-day business now aren't the great people when you want to change it. Because a lot of people don't like change. And they're quite comfy. They've got their nice seat at their desk. They're all cozy. They've got a heater there. And you come along and you say, right, we're going to change all that. Hang on a second. And you don't get engagement. And you actually get pushback from those people that you think are really valuable resources. So it's called, in sales, you call it the farmers and the hunters. Yeah, if you want people that can just look after accounts and trade with those accounts day in, day out, you want farmers. They just keep turning the work over. You want people to go and find your new business, you need the hunter. Yeah, and they are 2 different characters. That's why it's important that you understand the profile of the people, because there isn't a right or wrong profile, but there is a right and wrong profile if you're trying to get people to do specific tasks. Yeah. So in this scenario, I don't mind sharing with you, I had to remove an operations manager, a lady who is just a people pleaser, and the operations is falling apart. You know, she's got people that are discontent, and she's a lovely lady, but she's the wrong fit for where the business is today. Any other organisation on a different day, she must probably do a great job, but it's fitting the skills and the profile of the person with the task at hand. Yeah.
Engagement is the single biggest issue that business has. Statistically, the numbers out there are between 10 and 20% of people are the only engagement that bigger companies have. They only get 1 or 2 people in 10 engaged, and that includes the board. So do you go, how deep into the company do you go? Do you go right to the coalface, or do you just go to the slide?
So what we agree when we start the project are who are the key people that are going to influence the growth of the organisation. Yeah, and I mean, I have layered it. You can see I've got some blank boxes. I've layered this a lot deeper with some businesses, but for this business, I just did it in 2 simple layers: the team that are actively going to be trying to do the work, and the board that's overseeing it. Yeah,
Drivers and facilitators.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. And you know, this is a business that's got heavy investment behind it. They're trying to go from 20 million to 50 million in 3 years. Yeah. So what the investors wanted to understand was the position of the team versus the board themselves. And actually, the bit that we're changing in this business is the board, not the team. Yeah. Make sense? Okay.
It also highlights the fact that this is great for coaches and consultants going into businesses to see the fresh eye looking in.
Yeah.
Clearly, the directors in this scenario here are perfectly happy with the vision and believe that everything is going exactly how they want it to.
Yeah.
With the team not really sure where they're going.
Exactly.
And also, as James was pointing out to me, the skill gaps. What the directors feel that the skills within the team is different to the team's perception of it.
Yeah.
So the team believe they're doing a good job. The directors think they're not.
Yeah.
But the vision and skills just aren't aligned in any way, shape, or form. So
Exactly.
Even if this wasn't a business that's looking to grow, or for you guys to invest in, or whatever it might be, just that simple piece of information that actually direct people at director level and business owner level think very strategically and very ambiguously, as the team tend to think a lot more in detail, and it's actually reconnecting the two sometimes. So it's just simple communication can make a massive difference.
Yeah. I've used this method about 6 times now, and one of the really interesting things is when I start a project and I'm talking to either investors or the board about their business, the picture they paint for me is totally different from what I really find out. And when I take it back to them, they go, "Yeah, you're right." You go, "Well, you know, you're in cuckoo land then, aren't you? You know, these guys were all bullish. Yeah, no, we'll do that next year. 3 years? We don't need 3 years. So try 5, guys." Yeah. Anyway. So, and also what I do as part of the work is I pull out from the survey, and especially for board and investors, the key feedback points that I've heard that I think are really relevant that they hear verbatim. Okay, so for an example, you know, on vision, very ambitious, there will need to be a lot of change, over ambitious. Senior managers, to your point, understand it, but people need to be engaged, you know. So I give them that kind of feedback. And again, this is about, same with some of the things on consensus, a lot of disgruntled engineers, so that was in this scenario. We are 2 departmental middle managers are not on the same page. You know, you start to pull all those things out to say to an organisation, well, this isn't my view. This is your own people. This is where we're starting from. Yeah. And to cut a long story short, what this does is when you're trying to grow a business, it will cut through a lot of the, excuse my French, bullshit. It just cuts through all that. because, you know, everybody can talk a great game, can't they, about what they're doing, and we've got this great plan, but it's all fairy tale until you get down to the nooks and crannies of what's going on in a business today, and you start to really hear what people are saying. And then that's just a skills checklist that I took them through for things like sales training, people coaching, accountability targets, just to sort of go, right, so we got all this, have we? Tick it off. Let's tick it off. Have we got it all? No, we haven't even got half of it, right? So when you look at the three primary motives, and this is SDI, to be honest with you. So SDI points you in three different directions: people, performance, process. So we all, if you sit on a triangular map, we all sit somewhere within that triangle, you know, and the deeper we go into one area, the more focused we are on that point. So for instance, on this team, I can't show you the diagram because it's got people's names on it, so I can't do that. But the majority of the managers were all process orientated. And you can see that just from walking around their office. They got screens on the wall, numbers on them, what they're doing. It's really impressive. You think it was a financial institution. But they're lost in the long grass. So when people are too process orientated, they just get lost in that. Yeah? They're all about data. And they've got so much data, they actually go data blind. And the data blind bit is you've got so much information in your organization, you're not focusing on what the key information is. Yeah. So what are the key performance indicators? People confuse key performance indicators with just data, right? The key performance indicators should be the things that every day, every week, every month you're looking at, because they are influencing and driving your business. Yeah. What are those things? And they could be, for this organization, that, you know, one of their departments sells service plans. How many calls out have we done? Well, if we want to sell 60 service plans a day, ladies, I remember saying to the team, I think we need to make more than 30 calls. Yeah. It's getting down to that kind of data. Yeah. You know, what's your conversion rate? Well, our conversion rate's about, you know, let's call it 30%. Right, well, that's 100 calls then, isn't it? Yeah. So understanding where people sit. And some people sit between the two, but it's what's their primary driver. Yeah. So if you're recruiting people in a sales environment, you very much want them more performance focused than anything else. Yeah.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
Kind of going back a little bit on the vision part of it, and people potentially becoming demotivated. Would one of the scenarios be to maybe not share the full vision from the directors? Is that scenario that would potentially work? So, you know, they've obviously got a vision, it's very ambitious, and they may have data and other information that's available to them that let's call it a sales team, might not be privy to, but also that they might find that it's demotivating because they see a big target. They might actually be able to achieve it, but they almost need to be spoon-fed it. If that makes sense. Obviously, we're kind of talking about everybody being on the same page and sharing that vision, but is that always necessary?
No, it's not. It's what is relevant, and you know, I think sometimes when you're dealing with people of, you know, varying skill levels, it's what's relevant for them as well. You know, the overall, you know, the top line, I'd call it the top line vision of a business. Yeah, everybody should know. The interesting thing to do, which I do, is I just ask people, what do you think the vision is? You know, what do you understand about the vision of the business? And I listen to what they say and see whether there's any common things that are coming out with. They're coming out with, or whether their opinion of what the business is doing does match the vision. Yeah, so you can look at it from either direction, really. But you know, sometimes, personally, you know, organisations can spend far too much time doing a lot of talking about vision and top level stuff without getting into the detail of their team on how that gets delivered. And that's the biggest weakness I see, is that because it's all great talking a good game, isn't it? and you go, oh, we're going to be the biggest in the market. We're going to get 30% growth this year. Yeah, great. How are we going to do that then? And I'm talking about at the detail of what does that mean? And most directors don't even know what that means. In this scenario, the ops manager didn't realize that actually for them to achieve the target they've set for this year, which finishes at the end of this month, they needed about another 5 service engineers. So I said, so what's been our recruitment plan for recruiting and training new service engineers? Why do you think we need some more? Well, you need some more on your own maths, you know. So there's some basic maths that people don't do around what's driving the numbers, yeah. So this is always just a closing slide. Your strengths, your motives anchor your strengths. These are just some other, this just shows you some of the other feedback that came out of the survey. So incentive, lack of motivation for me, yeah, anyway, that's irrelevant really for you guys. And so then, yeah, you come to the end, which is the action plan, you know, which is the how do we get to 50 million? Key things like, you know, lots of KPIs, but are they the right ones? Why, how, what isn't really understood. We've got an unrealistic growth plan. The plan is not embedded in the business. Lack of detail on how, which was the point I just made. Yeah.
Would you do this into the 90-day plan type scenario, where you bring these big numbers into much smaller time frames?
Yeah.
So that you really start to assess whether the action plan is really is properly built, because it can look good,
yeah.
can't it? You can tick all the boxes,
yeah.
but actually you're 2 months in and you're way off target.
Yeah.
Rather than waiting to even the first quarter or even the next quarter, whereas you know straight away that you're off kilter.
Yeah.
With your planning.
Yeah. Yeah, it's drilling into that detail. So, you know, one of the mistakes a lot of businesses make, they'll make like an annual target, but they won't understand what underpins the target. So my point about, you know, well, we haven't actually even got enough service engineers to deliver that. So it's understanding how you deliver it and then what's going to drive that. So the key thing that I see all the time is that people don't get down to the detail of what is driving, what's the activity that's driving the revenue number. And if you think about it this way, if you understand the activity that drives the revenue number, you can almost forget about the revenue number, right? And that sounds mad, but if you know what's pushing that down, yeah, you'll eventually end up with a pile of money at the end, yeah? You've got to understand what's cause and effect.
So what you're saying is, it's okay looking at your profit and loss figure, the turnover figure.
Well,
that's not a driver, that's just a figure.
No, well, well, essentially as well, think about it like this way. It's just historic data. What we sold in February, what does that tell me? How does that help me now? If somebody had told me on the 1st of February what we're going to sell in February, that would have been an interesting conversation. But telling me at the end of February, guess what? We were 300 grand short this month, boss. Fantastic. I wish you'd told me that at the beginning of the month. Could have planned our cash better. You know, it's understanding how you plan the numbers forward, not how you look at them back. Any smart ass can come up with historic data. The real smart people are going, I know we're going to do between this and this next month. And the reason why that is because we've got all this activity happening. We know on average we get X% conversion rate, which translates into this much money, which gives us that much profit. There you go. There's my forecast. Bang. Yeah? And then when you're talking about price, you can build those factors in. Yeah? So with this company, who on one of their departments has got an 85% conversion, we've upped the price significantly, because anybody that's getting an 85% conversion, their price isn't high enough, especially if they're in a very competitive market. So we've upped the price, we've done some analysis. Our conversion rate might actually fall to as low as 75%, as low as, won't be 75, but it will be as low as 75%, we still make more net profit. Yeah. Okay. Any questions? Go.
The historic data. Surely there's an element of value that has, because you can see trends for busy periods. So, for example, if you go back over the last 3 years, and there's a consistency that can help calculate your projections and your forecast.
Well, it can if you're in a market that hasn't got no volatility. And I'm not saying that historic data has no value. What I'm saying is when you're trying to grow growth and you're trying to create activity, the more important stuff is what's driving the next set of numbers, not what my historic numbers say. And actually, there is now a school of thought that goes, it can be too, it's slightly dangerous actually going, well, we had a good March last March. You know, because we're living in a very different world now. Once upon a time, you could pretty much guarantee, well, if March is a booming month last year, why wouldn't it be this year? That isn't the case anymore. There's too many variables going on in the world which throw those numbers out. So it's keeping on top of what are the key drivers in the business that we're sure are going to deliver next month's numbers, and what data have we got to underpin it? You know. So, you know, people using their CRMs really effectively so that if they are following up their opportunities pipeline, they understand what their conversion rate does look like. Yeah.
I think going on the back of that, actually, some if they've worked in a corporate or in management or something like that, like for like figures is what your targets are usually set on. So I think when you go from working in a job like that to run a business, I think if you're used to looking at your like for like and your key performance indicators, you think, unless you maybe know, actually there was like something catastrophic that happened and that's why the figures were so low. But companies don't actually look at that and go, oh, they only took 200 quid, whereas normally they'd take 10 grand in that day because they hadn't realised that it was a snow day. Not that they happen here very often, but sometimes I remember there was one day I had a snow day at work and was allowed to go home. It was like, oh. But yeah, I think that's what a lot of businesses don't work on.
And remember with this, we're talking about trying to change the numbers. So we're not talking about business as usual. We're talking about we want to change the business. So, you know, spending too much time looking at the historic data isn't relevant because actually we're operating the business very differently now. We might even have a bigger cost base now. So we've got to do more. Yeah. Because inevitably, like I said at the beginning, if you're trying to grow a business, the first thing you're going to do is start spending money. Yeah? Okay, hope that was helpful.
Is there a, this might be just a flat note, but is there like a percentage you would say for a company to grow is a sensible thing to aim for? So we said we're doing X, we're doing Y, 100%.
Yeah.
And you kind of go,
that's all down to market and competitor analysis. Yeah. So that's again the piece of understand your market, understand your competitors, and understand the wider landscape of your market as well. And what I mean by that, not just your direct competitors, but the companies that are around those people. So you understand the whole marketplace, because that enables you to always look at diversification. Yeah.
Second, look at resources, because one of the biggest causes of company failures is the attempt to excessively grow, not working out in your resource, because generally, not always, but generally, you need people to grow. Well, people say try and grow too quick. But yeah, I mean, it's just a growth. Yeah, that should be okay. Yeah, you have to look at what it's going to cost for this individual or these individuals, working out are they coming on board on payroll or are they off as a subcontract. It's one of those resource issues, isn't it?
Yeah.
Just got to assess them.
You know, and as part of a resource analysis, we'd be looking at things like cash flow, stuff like that, because the other thing is the quicker a company grows, the steeper that climb is, the more cash burn they'll have. So they'll be burning through cash at quite a rate. Yeah. Sometimes when businesses have got cash, it's when actually their sales are going down. Believe it or not, they become cash rich. Yeah. Because they're getting the money from maybe 90 90 days ago, but their sales today are lower, so they're spending less, and they go, we got loads of cash, we're doing really well. No, you're not. You're going to go bust. You're going to crash any minute now. You just don't know it. Yeah. But, you know, some companies that are growing quite steeply, if they haven't got their finances in order, they can run out of money through growth. Yeah. Okay. Any other questions? No?
6 pillars. Been waiting on that for
there you go.
half now.
All right. Thank you.